Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this video. The game I'm going to show you in this video is a little bit unusual. It's not a subscriber replay, it's kind of one of my replays. If you look carefully enough, you'll notice that I am on the enemy team in this game, driving a T-37. However, we're not looking at it from my perspective, we're looking at it from the perspective of a tanker called Steroid Gontarski. I'm gonna just call him Steroid for short. It's weird looking at the chat, sorry, seeing my name appear as one of the red team. It's a little bit odd. Anyway, you can see I'm just having a chat with him at the beginning of the game. Anyway, this game was rather unremarkable from my perspective, but the fact that I'm showing it and the fact that I'm showing it from someone else's perspective might indicate, well, I have a reason for doing so. And yes, I know, it's an artillery game, but trust me, there is a reason I'm showing this. So, this is a Tier 7 game, although it's only just a Tier 7 game. Steroid's team here have one Tier 7, my team have 2. But of course, in terms of matchmaking, you want to take things like Tier 6 light tanks into account as they get Tier 7 matchmaking. So throw those into the bundle, so let's call the T-37s on each team Tier 7s, and Steroid's team have 2 and my team have 3. And Steroid here is just looking out for some targets and paying attention to likely artillery locations, and just basically trying to do a little bit of counter battery fire right at the beginning of the game, which is not a terrible idea. Now but notice he did a kind of clever thing there. He was looking over to look for some tracer fire, but he kept his he fixed his tank hull, and he kept his tank aiming at a different location of the map where he thought there might be some enemy tanks appear, and you know, that means that he is basically pre-aimed at that location, but also keeping an eye out for artillery. And as you can see, he's rewarded with an early kill on the type T-34. Now the AMX 13F3, this is the Tier 6. Ooh, that shot didn't hit. Tier 6 French artillery piece. It's a bit like the Burt in the sense that it's how it's mounted on a light tank chassis. This is of course the AMX 13-ton light tank chassis with in this case, a 155mm gun slapped on the top. So the AMX is quite a mobile machine, and it's actually one of the better artillery pieces out there. Certainly one of the more fun ones. I mean, it still wasn't enough for me to keep it, and there's a kill on the T-67. But it's definitely one of the more fun machines out there. So far, Steroid has picked himself up 2 kills of the 3 that his team have, but his team are currently trailing behind. Trying to pick out a shot on that Hellcat. Now, interestingly, that Steroid isn't repositioning between shots. That's something I would advise you do, but to be honest, it's a little bit of a hangover from goodbye Hellcat, from previous versions of World of Tanks, where you were much more likely to be counter battery fired. The way artillery are now implemented, a lot of the time it's just not worth your while as an artillery player to bother trying to do counter battery fire. Even though you saw Steroid having a look out for potential artillery locations earlier on. Takes a blind shot there at the T-34. The Rudy. Don't specifically know if it hit or not, but you can see that the enemy team here, or my team if you prefer, have managed to push fairly successfully through on the A and B lines. And Steroid's team are trailing 5-7, now 6-8, as I actually pick up a kill. Hurrah! Nailing Steroid team's Chaffee. So, Steroid here, this is a very awkward situation. But he's going to try and make the most of it. Lining up a kill on this Rudy. and manages to just obliterate the guy. Relatively close range, so there really wasn't much shell travel time involved with that shot, and the shot therefore was relatively accurate. I think Steroid's probably got a pretty good crew in this machine, as his aiming stats and accuracy are pretty good. It looks like the KV-2 is going to move himself out of Steroid's direct line of fire, so he's just switching targets to the Churchill instead. And you can actually see when he moves out of sniper mode, or artillery mode, whatever you want to call it. Oh, that was a bit unlucky. That he's got these bushes in front of him, so he does actually have some concealment between him and enemy tanks. Again, just trying to line up a shot on this Churchill. Just needs this Churchill. He's no longer spotted. But one of the nice things about the AMX is that it has a fairly respectable gun arc, and so Steroid can swing the gun around gently so as not to make the aiming circle bloom too much, to look at the KV-2, takes that shot, but the shot lands absolutely nowhere near, instead managing to blat a piece of scenery. So Steroid's team are now losing 7-10. This is not looking particularly good. He's got all of these tanks pushing up towards his location, and there's also tanks on the enemy team harassing his M6 down at G8. In fact, it's me harassing his M6 down at G8. So just trying to find shots on some of these guys, and there we go. Churchill takes the shot, is rewarded with kill number 5, but backs off now. It's very likely he's been spotted, or at least, if not spotted, that the bad guys have a rough idea of where he likely is. Trying to line up a shot on that T-43 now that he's no longer spotted. Su-122-44 has the guy's rear, but gets derped to death by KV-2. Steroid, however, picks up the kill on the T-43. 9-13. It is Steroid and a Panzer IV-H remaining. That is it. Really not looking very good. Steroid, however, himself is on a top gun, so he has been effective, even if a number of his teammates haven't. So now he's got a whole world of things to worry about. I mean, his only other teammate is a Panzer IV sitting at D0, and although he's managed to kill a lot of the tanks who were pushing along the A and B lines, there's still that KV-2 remaining that we know of. There's also at least T-37 who will likely be coming up from the south. So that could also be a problem. Lining up a shot on this KV-2, takes the shot, manages to hit the guy for a good chunk of his health. Not all of his health, but that's another 300 off. It would take one more shot to nail that KV-2. Enemy Su-100Y has now been spotted down south. And this is still an incredibly awkward situation. Now, Steroid here has switched his attention to the tanks who are being lit up by the Panzer IV. And I make a mistake here. I'm sitting still for way too long. Steroid lines up a shot and misses. Managed to move at the right time. But I was still sitting still for far too long. But the Panzer IV actually manages to kill me. And it's at this point that I leave the game. I didn't sit around to watch the game to its conclusion, and I thought, I think fairly reasonably, it's a Panzer IV-H and an AMX 13 artillery piece versus a Crusader SP, KV-2, VK3001P, Su-100Y and a Griller. My team should have this in the bag. Well, let's see what they actually managed to achieve. So we know there's still that KV-2 up around B7, A7, and there he is on 4 health points. He's taken a lot of damage. We're at the very extent of Steroid's gun arc there, but the Panzer IV manages to kill that guy. If memory serves, the Panzer IV was using the 105mm howitzer, but he gets taken out by the gorilla. So it's now Steroid versus 4, and with an excellent blind shot, Steroid manages to make it 3 versus 1 instead of 4 versus 1, taking out the SU-100Y. But the Crusader SP on the enemy team is no slouch, and he was very close to doing some damage to Steroid's tank. As it is, he only does some track damage. Now this is a kind of awkward situation, because it's clear that the enemy artillery has zeroed in on Steroid's position, hence that shot from the Crusader SP. Conversely, this position is giving Steroid some cover to work from. It's awkward. If Steroid stays here indefinitely, he's basically relying on RNG to stop the enemy artillery from killing him. If, however, Steroid moves around, well, I mean, it's artillery on the move has terrible accuracy, you know, an engagement with an enemy tank is probably going to go south. But the last location where that VK3001P was spotted was camping up on the enemy ridgeline. Is he going to be coming forwards? Nah, I don't know. It's kind of awkward. This is an odd situation. And the kind of awkward situation for Steroid. Having said that, it's not a foregone conclusion. I mean, the enemy team has 2 artillery pieces and a VK3001P, and the VK doesn't have any kills. He was last seen camping at G3. There's a good chance he's not a particularly good player. Now, Steroid spots this gorilla, manages to slew his tank around. He doesn't use a camo net on this machine. I assume he uses a gun rammer and gun laying drive, takes a shot, and manages to obliterate the gorilla, evening it up to 2 versus 1, and he, importantly, moves because he knows that Crusader SP was pre-aimed at his location. So he takes the shot and goes somewhere else. And then returns to his previous location. Surely he can't pull off another ambush from here. He's been ambushing tanks left, right and centre from this same location. And he seems to be thinking that the game's going to be a draw. Yeah, I can see why. There's 3 minutes of this game left. And, you know, on this map, on El Haluf, it can take you a long time to drive around with that ravine in the middle. So, yeah, what are we going to do? I'm going to speed this along a little bit. Steroid just has a bit of banter with the enemy gorilla in chat there. And suddenly, well, we now know where both of the enemy tanks are. There's the VK3001P, who is clearly the priority, and the enemy Crusader is in the capture circle. To give credit to him, it looks like he is probably trying to make this a win, although he doesn't actually have the time to capture. This is an encounter game, which means the capture counter takes twice as long to go up, so it basically takes 200 seconds, sorry. And 200 seconds is just over 3 minutes. Takes a shot at the VK3001P and kills him. He should be relatively safe in that location. It's unlikely that the Crusader SP has the gun arc to shoot from the capture circle to his position, and just as I say that, the Crusader proves me wrong. Making me wonder actually if the Crusader is stock and still using the gun from the Bishop and the FV304, as if memory serves, that gun has a very good gun arc, but the top gun on the Crusader does not. And some people actually use the stock gun on that tank out of preference, although when you're shooting at tier 7, 8 and 9 machines, that 3.7 inch howitzer can feel rather anemic. So, we know that the enemy Crusader is down in that capture circle somewhere, the Crusader SP. And Steroid actually manages to spot this guy out. Zeroes in. I mean, this guy apparently doesn't have sixth sense, he doesn't know he's been spotted, or if he does, he certainly hasn't spotted Steroid. Steroid just lets the gun aim, he has all the time in the world, picks up kill number 10, and the win. Burning through an awful lot of ammunition in the process. Yeah, so with that said, let's go and have a look at the results. Well, hopefully you now understand why I wanted to show you that game. That was one of those unusual things. It was an artillery carry. You don't see them very often, certainly not since the patch 8.6 artillery nerfs. They're very rare, but they do occasionally happen. So, Steroid, unsurprisingly, picked up an ace tanker. Bruiser, High Caliber, Top Gun, Paul's medal for 10 kills, and a Gauze medal for doing at least 10 times his own health in damage in an artillery piece. A very, very impressive game there. Scores really speak for themselves. He got 3,323 damage, 10 kills, 1,515 base experience, which is even more impressive when you remember that artillery generally will share a lot of its experience with other tanks because it's not generally spotting for itself. And so you tend to get lower XP values. Easily the top player on either team by damage or experience done. The SU-122-44 did pull his weight with 1,800 damage, but the rest of Steroid's team were generally speaking pretty terrible. On the enemy team, I finished top of that. I mean, it wasn't a spectacular game for me, but I finished top with 2 kills, just over 1,000 damage and 422 experience. Our Crusader SP managed 1,200 damage. The T-34-85 Rudy 870, and the rest was rather uninspiring. So the difference there was just that Steroid managed to be a hero and pull that win out of the bag. 16 shots fired, 9 hits, 9 pens, 5 splashes for that 3,323 damage, 1,952 from a distance of more than 300 meters, which means that he did 1,500 damage from a distance of less than 300 meters, which is unusual when driving an SPG, especially at tier 6. 2 enemy vehicles spotted, 11 damaged, 10 killed, 107 assistance damage into the bargain, 39 base defense points, 1.39 kilometers travelled. With a premium account, he made a profit of 47,500 credits and picked up 6,816 experience plus 336 free experience. It was a very impressive game indeed. And despite the fact that it was an artillery replay, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.